Adrian, over to you to maybe introduce a little bit more about yourself, and when we've heard from Adrian, we'll introduce our other guests for today. But Adrian, if you want to join us.
Thank you, Richard. Really pleased to be here today, and thanks everyone for turning out in what is feeling very much like a kind of wind down before Christmas for many people, or a stagger to Christmas, I think, in many cases. So as Richard said, I'm Chief Executive of Oxfordshire Community Foundation. I took over from Jane on an interim basis in July, and then was appointed permanently following an open recruitment in October. So I'm relatively new to the role, but have been working with the team very closely through the coronavirus response and more broadly. I thought I'd talk through a bit of what we do and how businesses are already engaging with some of that work, and then share a few thoughts and ideas at the end about how you might want to think about engaging if you are a business. But I suspect I'm preaching to the converted here, because I think many of you are already doing huge amounts anyway. So Oxfordshire Community Foundation, I think kind of pre-pandemic, we had our grant making programme. We supported people with donor advised funds to give effectively in the local community as well. And then following a landmark report 5 years ago, we had 3 strategic programmes focused on the biggest issues and challenges in Oxfordshire, and that is loneliness and isolation, educational disadvantage and inequality, and homelessness, which has led to these 3 programmes in each of those areas. Through the pandemic response, we've worked under the strapline of respond better, recover stronger. Most of what we've done to date has been focused on the former. But increasingly, we've been thinking more about what the sector, what communities in Oxfordshire can do in order to recover stronger. And there's a few priority areas have come out of this work as we think about recovering stronger. One is improving diversity and representation in the charitable sector, which is shockingly one of the least diverse and representative sectors in the country when you look at senior leadership and trustee boards. And you know, there are some understandable reasons behind that, but I think it's something that we really need to address as a matter of urgency in the next year. The second is strengthening philanthropic giving in Oxfordshire. Many philanthropists know that they haven't been hit by the pandemic and lockdown anything like as hard as many communities have been, and are very keen to support. And we are keen to grow our networks in Oxfordshire to shore up ourselves organisationally, because our income isn't very secure, and the pandemic hasn't helped with that, but also to fuel our strategic programmes and the broader community sector in Oxfordshire. And then the third area, and I'll talk a lot more about this later on, is getting Oxfordshire online. And obviously the digital deficit, digital exclusion has come up as a major issue for all sectors of society out of the pandemic. So first, just want to touch on our 3 strategic programmes and how they currently work and how you can engage, well, 2 of the 3 actually. Age Friendly Banbury is a partnership approach looking at trying to make Banbury a friendly place for older people to live and work. And you can see from this, the partners, there's quite a few commercial organisations engaged there. And what that means in practice is these organisations have signed up to a business-friendly, to an age-friendly charter. And a lot of this is very basic stuff about being welcoming and friendly, making seats available, making your toilets available if you're a restaurant or cafe. And it just means that older people can go into Banbury less worried about not being able to sit down, not being able to get a rest, not being able to use a toilet. And there's wider work been going on as well in terms of improving access and thinking about Banbury as a space, and much of that is involving local businesses. Oxfordshire Homeless Movement, I hope you've all heard of, is another multi-agency, multi-sectoral partnership. We're working with landlords and business owners through the COVID response. Oxfordshire Homeless Movement was at the heart of the Everybody In work that got almost every homeless person in Oxfordshire into accommodation on a short-term basis initially, and they're now working with a range of partners to try and make that work in the longer term. And doing things like developing proposals for a social lettings agency, which would enable landlords to let their properties at a slightly lower than market rent, but still a good commercial rent, to organisations who could use them to house homeless people. So you're able to give back while still getting some income is the idea. There is a number of calls to action on our website around OHM, or on the OHM website indeed. In fundraising and donating, we've got a Christmas appeal going on at the moment. please do share that through your networks. Just being aware of it as an issue as an organisation, I think is really helpful. Signing your organisation up to the charter, which says you recognise it's an issue and you're making a few small steps to try and help where you can. Just social media, amplifying the messages, sharing the messages, and being part of public Zoom meetings, obviously, and looking at the website so you're educated and informed. And I think the living wage is a really important thing for if you're a socially engaged business locally. I think it's very important that you do pay the living wage and make sure that all your staff and all your employees, and ideally all of your contractors as well, are receiving the living wage. Now, I'm aware that can be a challenge, but I think it's a good aspiration for companies to work towards. In terms of the COVID response, you probably know businesses have been phenomenal as part of local communities and working in all sorts of ways, making furloughed staff available, donating food, supermarkets and others. Many businesses have helped with food distribution, with delivering prescriptions, with providing hot meals. I know cafes and restaurants and taxi firms in my local area have done fantastic stuff. I was also involved in a 3D printing project locally, and we had Diamond Light Source realised their 3D printers were sitting idle, turned them around, and it took what was effectively a hobby-run organisation by a few people printing on their private printers to something that was churning out thousands of PPE masks that were being made available to the health service and other care workers across the county. And general advice and support to the sector. So some of our early webinars, we had HR specialists, IT specialists and others from business talking to the VCS sector, providing advice and guidance at a time when people were struggling to understand even what the word furlough meant, if you can remember such a time. I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about getting Oxfordshire online. So we have an ambition to try and get everyone in Oxfordshire online by 2025. When we first started thinking about this, this felt like a kind of quite a challenging ambition, and actually I think it's an essential requirement over the next five years or so, because increasingly services are moving online, support's moving online, and that's not going to change as we cut. Well, some meetings will start happening in person, but a lot of services and GPs and health care and so forth are going to be much more online than they were pre-pandemic. So getting people online is going to be very important. There's a huge challenge, we think, and even getting numbers is a bit of a challenge, but tens of thousands of people in the county aren't online. Around 10,000 children aren't online, with huge implications for their ability to learn. And schools are talking about blended learning approaches post-lockdown, where a lot of learning will be online. So that's going to be a big issue and a high priority for us to address. And working age adults and others as well are also facing issues with on complex benefits processes and other things being online. Why Oxfordshire? Why now? I think I've covered some of this. Well, Oxfordshire has got some of the lowest levels of digital exclusion in the county. We've got some of the best super fast broadband coverage in the county, although when you're struggling on a Zoom meeting, it might not always feel like it. So we've got the smallest gap to close in terms of digital exclusion of anywhere in the county. We've also got massive resources. There's probably about 100,000 internet-enabled devices that could be refurbished and made usable for people in the county, and that would close that gap in terms of people not having the appropriate devices. And we've also got a concentration of knowledge. We've got Nominate Trust about 200 yards from where I'm speaking now, expertise in the universities, and a quite high concentration of senior telecom staff in the county who live here and work either just over the border or in the county itself. The approach, starting on the left-hand side, is to build the refurbishment capacity when we're talking with a few social enterprises and local charities about setting up a good county-wide coverage there, and doing so in a way that we can refurbish and recycle, reuse equipment in a way that brings skills into the economy and jobs, and is also part of a circular economy for the future. As we start to build that, we will be building the donations pipeline, initially working with businesses and other employers, but then at some point having a public appeal for donations. We're looking at solutions for data connectivity and security as well. Vodafone, for example, have just distributed 350,000 SIM cards to schools. I think some of them are still available. If you know schools who need SIM cards, do put them in touch. And there's other potential solutions in the longer term through community Wi-Fi and others. There's one of the London boroughs have put Wi-Fi hotspots on all their lampposts, and will build that in as a future specification for all lampposts, so they will have free Wi-Fi across their borough. And we're taking a phased approach to needs, prioritizing school children in the first instance. And in terms of how businesses can engage with this, obviously donating computers, tablets and other IT equipment will be critical. Businesses will probably be able to donate at a scale and a quality that the public probably won't match. The gifted SIMs I've already talked about, and that's, you know, some companies will have discounted access. We're also looking at data gifting further down the line as an option, and companies and individuals engaging with that to gift unused data in your contract would be really great. We have pretty good knowledge around waste electronic recycling and so forth, but there's other issues like data security. If the public are going to be donating old laptops, for example, they'll want to know that that data is secure, and we have people like Sophos in the county, and it would be great to work with a specialist local organisation who could kind of give a stamp of kind of authority and approval on whatever data cleansing systems are put in place. Logistical support, we're going to need donation sites for public donations, and just general comms, amplifying, sharing messages, putting those messages out with your networks. More broadly, and this again, you probably know a lot of this, but you know, if you've got a business, enabling staff to have time to be trustees, to mentor, to work with local charities, thinking about any business downtime. There are telephone befriending services that can use your IT so that people can phone from their desk and, you know, take 20 minutes or something to make a couple of calls to reach out to people who might be isolated or lonely. Training opportunities, if you have, you know, training coming up and available, offering discounted spaces or empty spaces to charities locally might well be valuable to them. Meetings and conference space, fingers crossed we get to meet in person in 2021. A lot of businesses have been very generous in the past at providing meeting space for people. And, you know, collaboration forums and networks like B4 and NEXUS, I think are fantastic. Nearly there. And I think for me, starting from your own personal position or business position, thinking about what you care about, what your organisation cares about, what your staff care about, and that may well have some alignment with your business objectives as well, and that's absolutely great if it does. There may be opportunities to develop social capital or sense of purpose for the organisation through engaging with local charities and social enterprises.
Oh, have we lost you, Adrian? We've lost you.
Yeah, I think he's frozen.
Is he? Okay.
Oh dear.
I was just writing in. Oh, we're there.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. We lost you for a minute, Adrian.
Oh, sorry. I've just got a sign up saying my internet connection's unstable, which, given I've been talking about getting everyone online, is slightly frustrating. But anyway.
Maybe go off camera, Adrian. It might help if your broadband is struggling.
So I was just talking through the questions to ask yourself if you are a business wanting to be more engaged, how it's very valid for that to be aligned with your business interests. So BMW gave us money because they knew that a lot of their staff came to the carnival, and so seeing BMW as part of a huge community event was very important to them and gave them huge value in terms of their staff and potential future recruitment. Thinking about the skills you have that might be useful to share, the skills you might want to develop and how you might be able to develop, you know, maybe softer skills through partnering with a charity, and any downtime you have that might help. And I think that's my last slide, so I'm going to pause there. So I've probably spoken slightly too long, but thank you for listening, and I'm always happy to converse and share experiences.
Thanks, Adrian. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for? Obviously, Mike doesn't. Any questions for Adrian at all? No. Please, Adrian, if you could maybe pop your email address in the chat, and if anybody would like to get in contact with you about any of the opportunities. Did you say about the SIM cards that Vodafone have got? They're running this scheme.
Yes, Vodafone have been gifting out. In fact, I'll try and find a link and post it in 350,000 SIM cards.
Your comment about getting in contact with Vodafone fills me with dread, because where would you go? So if you have got a link, that'd be great.
I'll find a link.
That sounds like a 4-hour phone call to me.
Yeah, you've been placed on hold. Please press 1 for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, if you could, that'd be brilliant, Adrian. But as I say, if anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask Adrian or get in contact with him afterwards, I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. So thanks, Adrian. I mean, one of the Adrian referenced NEXUS, and for those of you that are not sure what NEXUS is, we basically provide all B4 members with the opportunity to engage a charity or a social enterprise, not-for-profit, fair trade organisation, co-op, etc., with an opportunity to gain B4 membership benefits at no cost to either party. And with what's happened over the last 9 months, we've actually opened that up to not just charities and social enterprises, but also any individual or small business that could really add value to B4 in terms of some of the conversations and articles that have been written by other members, and to bring their expertise into B4. Also looking to the next generation to provide them with opportunities to engage with the network and help for them to learn from us, but also us to learn from them. And we'll hear from Amanda shortly about the great work that she's doing with her podcast. But first I wanted to introduce Ruth Hawkins. So Ruth is from BHO based in Abingdon. And if any of you are on LinkedIn, you'll see great work that Ruth's doing in the community with the BHO and various initiatives. So Ruth, perhaps I can hand over to you, and you can tell us a little bit more about what you do, and also bring in your Nexus partner, Flag DV.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, we're BH&O solicitors in Abingdon, Boardman, Hawkins and Osborne. We're a family law specialist that set up in 2018 in September, so we're still relatively new. Just over a year's worth of business and the pandemic hits, which is great. I will say, though, that, I mean, good for us, but we've probably been busier than ever. In that family law, the pandemic has certainly thrown up a rush of new client inquiries throughout most of this last year, both in terms of sort of matrimonial work, but disputes over children, and also my particular specialism and two of my partners is in child protection work, and unfortunately that has certainly increased. So we certainly saw a lull for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the pandemic, but since then the work's been consistently coming through, but alongside new work, our existing caseload has become even more complicated, delayed, not finished and extended. So our caseloads are bigger than they ever have been, I think, at the moment, which is great, and not so great in many respects. In terms of B4 and Nexus, we took advantage of that about this time last year, I think, Richard, probably, and brought Flag DV on board as our Nexus partner. They're a charity that we've both individually and as a business have had long-standing links with. So although we've only been going for 2 years, the 3 partners have worked elsewhere in another firm and have been long-standing links and partners to B4, to Flag DV. And some of our consultants were original founding trustees of the charity back when they started. Laura will tell you a bit more about the charity, but essentially they were set up just prior to the legal aid cuts from a few years ago coming into being, when family law generally was almost across the board cut from legal aid budgets. So there are some exceptions, including in child protection work and where domestic abuse can be proven. But essentially legal aid was cut. And the charity was set up initially in West Berkshire and in Newbury, but has subsequently expanded to the whole of the Thames Valley region to provide free legal advice to victims of domestic abuse. And a number of our lawyers volunteer currently with the charity on at least a monthly basis. And one of my partners is a current trustee. So we've got very good links. And we thought it was an interesting referral for B4 and NEXUS because of domestic abuse. It's sort of recognised that it's one of those areas that doesn't show any boundaries. So actually, some of us will be working with people or employing people that are experiencing either domestic abuse or coercive control and issues in relationships. And it's, I think, useful for employers to know that there is help out there. And as an employer ourselves, you know, we recognise that it's going to have an impact on an employee's mental health and their ability to do their job properly. So if we can help refer to appropriate networks, etc., then it's all to the good, really. That's essentially why I've come this morning or this afternoon, Richard.
No, good to hear from you, Ruth. And does Laura want to add a few comments of her own?
Well, thanks for the introduction, Ruth. Yes, we do a referral process through our website and through partners with organizations like Victims First, the police, as well as other organizations that might come across somebody who presents domestic abuse concerns. We partner them, we set them up with a phone conversation. Now, it used to be one-to-one appointments, but obviously COVID forced us to go completely digitally. We've seen our referral numbers go through the roof. We're over double now what we saw last year. And we're seeing a lot of changes in how people are, the concerns that people are presenting. I think our understanding of domestic abuse has changed a lot, both in society and in other people's minds. And many people don't recognize that they are in an abusive situation. We equate domestic abuse to violence, somebody physically hurting somebody. But as time has gone on, we're becoming more aware that coercive control is actually just as dangerous of a situation for somebody. So we've seen a lot of referrals come with people presenting, you know, those types of concerns, and so it's been a big change for the charity as we're looking at maybe even increasing the types of solicitors that we recruit, not just family law, but maybe we need a bit more expertise in finance and in other areas to better support our clients. But it's been quite a challenging year, and but we've seen a lot of growth, both obviously from our referrals, but also in learning how to work better as a charity to actually support people. And we're really excited for the new year and the changes that we're going to be able to implement to support more people.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us, Laura and Ruth. And in terms of extending your reach, Laura, I'm sure Ruth can do that, but we'll be providing NEXUS partners with more opportunities to connect with the wider B4 community in the new year. So we will certainly be in touch.
Definitely.
Now, in terms of new NEXUS members, Melissa Noten, Mel's just sent me a message saying, and I thought I read it and saying she's freezing, but she looks still clear to me. But what she's saying, she's expecting a freezer delivery any minute. And it's amazing how these delivery companies have got us by the short and curlies, haven't they, really? And we jump to their every whim. So Mel, if I can bring you on, if you can maybe explain a little bit about what you do, and if you have to dash mid sentence, we'll understand.
Thank you. If it wasn't Christmas, I'd ignore it, honestly. So I've actually recently retired from the NHS. I worked there for 31 years with children and families in a clinical role and then in a management role. And since retiring, I am now doing some part-time work, developing something that I loved while I was working there, which is coaching. And coaching and supporting management and leadership initially, but then also anyone who's working in a small business or on their own or in any capacity, because it's a skill that can give so much and help so much, even with just one conversation to people. So I'm working part-time doing that for leadership and management, but the reason I've come on today is because I wanted to be able to offer some support to local community, to businesses, to charities, and offer some free leadership slots through January, because I think it can be really hard to afford leadership slots, coaching slots. I think it can be really hard to afford the luxury of that almost when you're working in a charity or when you're working, starting up a new business or in a small business. But actually, even if we just have one conversation, I think it can be something that can really help and really give support, particularly at a time when everyone's working from home in isolation. So really why I came on today was to say that if somebody wants to have a go at it and thinks it might help, then if they want to contact me, I'm going to keep as much of my diary free in January as I can, and I'll be aiming to offer free slots.
Fantastic, Mel. If you can make sure you send that offer through to me, we're going to start as of next Monday with B4 members. Will be delighted to hear just one communication a week where we will be sending out news about future webinars or article opportunities or offers from other members. So we can include that on there, Mel, and that goes to all other B4 members that we've got on the call, and we'll reference where you can find further information or connect with you to take the individual member up on that particular opportunity. So please do email that through to me, and just pop your email.
Yeah, will do.
Contact details in the chat. That would be great. So on to our final guest. So Amanda joined us for the recent B41 event, which broadcast live from the Ashmolean, which was a focus on equality, diversity, and inclusion. Poor Amanda came along as support for her colleague Lydia, who was co-presenting with me that particular day. And we had a lull in proceedings, and Lydia chucked Amanda into the hot seat, and Amanda did a brilliant job of filling what probably seemed like about 4 hours of dead space, Amanda, but was it about 10 minutes, I think you did? But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you do, because Amanda's at Brooks, but you run a podcast, and we've been delighted to welcome Amanda into B4. And I think just on that particular point, any of you, you do have, as I say, one opportunity to bring a social enterprise or a charity or a small business, whatever, into B4 that you think would benefit from B4, and the community can benefit from that individual or that organisation. But we're also once a month, 5 additional nominations can be put forward to B4, so we can nominate an additional 5 Nexus members every month. So it's not just your own. You think about anybody else you'd like to nominate, please do so. But Amanda, over to you, and maybe give us a little bit of background about what you do, and be good to hear from you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for inviting me today as well. It's great to see so many people doing so many amazing things. I'm really impressed by just the panel and what everybody is doing. So yeah, that's how I'll start. My name is Amanda, and I'm an enterprise project assistant at Oxford Brooks. So I graduated in 2019 and got a job straight afterwards as working in the enterprise support department with Lydia. So this year, during the pandemic, I decided to set up a podcast because I was finding it a little bit difficult to get into the world of architecture. And I kind of wanted to know if anybody else was sort of facing the same sort of struggle that I was. And I actually realized that a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I studied with were also finding it difficult to get into the construction industry. So I decided to interview a few architects, designers, and just sort of get to know more about what it is to actually become an architect or to be in the realm of architecture. So essentially, this podcast is called the 1 to 100 Architecture Podcast, which serves as a medium of self-reflection and discovery and ways to sort of understand the future of oneself or the future of your prospective career. And it is essentially a tool for graduates, students, or even people who may have been in architecture in their past life, just to sort of understand and their identity within the role of design. And I think it's time for designers to sort of collaborate together and to provide more opportunities and sort of take away that barrier to get into a field that should be accessible. I think sometimes in architecture, there are a lot of complexities and roadblocks along the way, especially because it is a 7-year course. So the 1 to 100 podcast is basically something that you can use to sort of propel yourself forward if you ever you need that motivation or sort of reason as to why you started doing what you were doing. And I guess through the podcast, our understanding as well of other people's experiences were definitely heightened through social media and just talking to people and understanding why young people get into construction and what it is that motivates them to want to do it even more. So we're currently working with charities such as the RIBA and collaborating with SMEs like New Architecture Writers, the Architecture Foundation, and just sort of, again, understanding more on people's experiences and how we can do our bit to just make it a little bit easier and a little bit better. So yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of the NEXUS community. And if there is anybody that, you know, has any connections with the construction industry, or if you would like to get in contact with myself to be a part of the 1 to 100 podcast team, then please do get in touch.
That's brilliant, Amanda. Thank you very much. If you can maybe pop your contact details in the chat, that'd be great. And Amanda threw the gauntlet down for local architects during her slot at B41. Did anybody take the bait at all, Amanda? Not yet.
Yeah, we actually did have a few people reaching out to us after that, so that was really great. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, fantastic. That is good. Yeah, but as Amanda said, if anybody has got any contacts in the construction field that can help open a few doors, that'd be wonderful. But thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate you joining us, and thank you. I think it's been great opportunity to see the breadth of organisations that come under the expanding NEXUS umbrella. And as I said, if any of you would like to nominate, or if you haven't yet appointed your NEXUS partner, please do get in touch with myself or Lorna for more information. But it is simply a case of emailing us, introducing us to your NEXUS partner, and we do the rest. And what you do between yourselves is up to you. Obviously, Ruth's very active with Laura, which is great. Some are just literally introductions. But if there is a good fit, then it makes the partnership all the more better for both parties and for everybody else.